Round 3 of the Manufacturers Cup 2024. I had a really good qualifying lap. I got P3 and I was feeling pretty good about this race. I was pretty comfortable on the track. I haven't had too much practice with tire changes and pit strategy with any of my races yet, so it was kind of a learning experience for me, but there was just so many things that went wrong in this race. I wanted to commentate and kind of explain what's going on because you can't really tell with some of the major issues that happened. But yeah, so I qualified in P3. I was very happy and I felt like I was doing pretty good as far as lap times on this track. I think in like top 3,000 or something like that, maybe 5,000. I've been kind of regularly under 5,000, but regardless, yeah. So this is round 3. The beginning of the race started off pretty well, but this whole race was really just doomed to fail. There was no chance I was going to win this race or even stay in P3 where I'm at. All unknown to me. There was things that were out of my control. Well, some of it was out of my control, and other things were just rookie mistakes. So, look at that nice dive bomb attempt there, and gave me a little switcheroo. But for the first lap or so, it's pretty quiet after that dive bomb attempt. I get up to P2 because that guy took out P3, and so for the first lap or so, I think like 4 laps, my whole goal was to just stick up with P1 and try to just stay in second place, and I did pretty well for 4 laps, and him and I proceeded to really pull away from the pack, and so by the end of the stretch before I made this mistake, a very, very, very crucial mistake, we were really pulling away, and I thought this was in the bag, and I was very excited and driving calm. I wasn't like, heart racing nervous or nothing, but for some reason I just made this very crucial mistake coming up here. I think we're on lap 3. Getting to lap 4 now. But, maybe it's lap 5. I can't remember, sorry. But right here, I'm really slow, bad at this section as far as the whole track goes, but yeah, I caught a little bit too much grass there and it just full spun me out. Luckily I had the thought to crank my wheels so it kicked my back end straight instead of having me full spin 180, and I ended up getting back on track in a relatively good fashion as far as time wise, lost for the accident, but at this point, P1 is pulled way away from me, and there goes my shot at, for sure, solidifying second place. And now third and fourth are kind of gaining on me. They're pretty close. But it was still a couple more laps of me just holding P2 and just trying to pull back away from third and fourth. But in fact, I was making some slight mistakes. Plus, there's another factor that really comes into play later on in this race that was kind of starting now intermittently. So P3 and 4 ended up gaining on me in a matter of 2 or 3 laps. And that's this stretch of boring part until this is when P3 is right on me and we're going for the last hairpin here. Goes on the outside. I take the inside. I can't remember what happened this time. Oh yeah, I think this is that was a mistake on me. I think I cut over too much onto him. He was right in my pit spot, and then yeah, so me trying to use that full width of the track, I got spun out, and then that was pretty crucial. Huge mistake, and at this point I'm like frustrated. It dropped me down to P6. So I'm in P6 and nothing happens for a little bit. I'll just zip past through this stuff. Yeah. And so this is when I decided to take the pit at the end of lap 9. Enter the pit, change into the medium tire, hard tires. Oh no, medium tires. It's soft and mediums in this race. Yeah. So I'm switching out of my softs into the mediums, and my strategy with this was I could run the softs as much as I felt like I could without losing too much grip and time on the laps. And then when I switched to the mediums, my car has about a half a tank of fuel or 3/4 of a tank of fuel. And so my thought was the car would be lighter on the mediums, so the mediums would overall just perform better at the end of the race versus if they were in the beginning with a full tank of gas, petrol. So fresh out of the pit here, and I didn't do too much practice with the mediums on this track, but I definitely was doing all right. I got someone behind me. What position did I come out of the pit in? 10th. So I lost a couple positions with my pit choice, but I just gained one back there with that guy spinning out. Pretty sure it's uneventful for the next minute or so, so I'll let this play out and I'll comment when the next catastrophe starts to happen. So it's hard to tell in the VR footage, but right now my cockpit is kind of starting to float around and get weird and move on me, which I've never had happen while I'm playing Gran Turismo. So right there on the long straight, I'm actually recentering my view, resetting my VR. And I'm surprised I was able to get that successfully while next to someone on a straight. It was risky, but like I said, my view in the cockpit kept like kind of shifting around, and you can kind of see it shuffling, but it's a little hard to tell with my head movement and just the track itself and whatnot. But it definitely becomes a lot more apparent later that something is wrong with my VR's tracking of my surroundings. And like I said, I've never had this happen, so I was just more or less focused on racing, but still attentive to the issues and was trying to find the solution by resetting my view, but it ended up not being worth it because what happens next is pretty terrible. Yeah, and right there, that shaking of my head is me trying to get my cockpit to stop wiggling around on me. It's still doing horrible things with my tracking. And so I kept just trying to get it to calibrate or focus on what it needed to so it wasn't wiggling around, but it had me pretty distracted. And of course, that let nines past me, but also another thing that I mentioned earlier is still kind of brewing in the background, and that's more or less why that Porsche was able to overtake me there, because my car was not going as fast as it could have. He buffed that turn up, but I didn't have enough to even come close to pass him, so I just gave him a little bump to keep him back on the road. Yeah, we're just ripping through here. So right here, it's easier to tell that my cockpit is moving around and doing weird things, and me shaking my head trying to get it to calibrate again. It became pretty distracting, and I went for the inside, but way missed my break point and went off track here. But at this point, I was just so distracted with why everything was moving around in the car, and it was kind of getting disorienting and a little nauseous, because obviously it should be moving around like that. And so at that point, I'm like smacking my VR, and then this fatal issue happens. It cut to the screen where it says cannot track surroundings, and gave me the pass through, in which I realized that my living room was completely dark. And I started this race at like dusk, I don't know, whatever time slot it was, and I forgot to turn my lights on, and just a huge rookie mistake. I'm so used to PSVR1 tracking fine in the dark, and I just didn't consider the sun going down. And so at that point in time with the black screen, I was literally getting up out of my racing rig, taking my VR off in the middle of a race, and turning my living room lights on. Just the worst case scenario. Nothing anyone wants to do during a very serious Manufacturers Cup race. But that's what I had to do, so I got back in, and luckily I didn't get penalized enough to get booted out of the race somehow, and hunkered down and didn't even want to be in this race at this point, because I'm dead last. And oh no, not quite, I'm second to last. I will be last here because of another problem though soon. And so yeah, I did want to obviously have my sportsmanship go down, so I just plugged through and kept racing. And this is just a bunch of non-eventful laps of me being like in last or second to last, but either way, racing through. But then another major problem that arises here very shortly, that's kind of intermittently been happening throughout this race, is my potentiometer on my throttle started to give out. Of course, in the middle of a race, where everything else could have gone wrong too. So basically what happened is wasn't letting me go full throttle. So on the long straights, it was really evident that they were just that guy doing another bad dive bomb attempt. It was really evident that my car just wasn't going as fast as everyone else's, and it was at the point in time I didn't quite know what was going on, and I had to like watch the replays because it doesn't show you the throttle bar when you're in VR. And so after watching the replay, I realized just what was going on. But turns out like I tried the next race after this one, and my qualifying times, I couldn't even get below a 128, and my fastest lap time qualifying prior to this was like 126.6. So it was quite a huge drop in pace, and it is just because even through the turns, not even just on the straights, like my throttle wasn't going quite full. It was worse on some laps than others, but it definitely was pretty bad towards the end the whole time. And so yeah, I just had no hope of winning this race. There was no chance because of all of these things that happened. But the last final straw was my throttle just not going to full throttle, and people just walking away like this guy here in the straights. So yeah, very frustrating race. This one ended up being a complete wash for me in the cup races. I ended up getting 0 points because I attempted to do the race the second time before I completely realized the problem with my throttle, and then once I realized it after qualifying and having a really horrible chance of not even come close to my old times, and the race started, and then the whole pack, everyone just kind of walked away from me. I just quit out of the race, which is something I really didn't want to do, but I also didn't want to suffer through 20 laps knowing I wasn't going to win, so I just backed out, and it gave me 0 points for this one, but that's okay. Lessons were learned, and I ended up swapping my clutch pedal and my acceleration pedal, just kind of like some of the innards or whatever, so that way now my potentiometer is fixed because I didn't use my clutch as much, nearly as much as my throttle, obviously. And so it should be good for a little while. I'm probably going to get the upgrade kit for it here soon with the brake one as well, but anyways, that's my really the worst race I think I've ever had. Race experience, just a series of unfortunate events, and thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.